Hi, this is Monty with another can-do moment. I just completed my first trip with my 2025 Armada, towing my travel trailer. It did okay, but there's some pluses and some minuses. I'm going to go over them with you. And I'm going to compare its performance to similar trips in my 2018 Grand Cherokee. I understand they're different in sizes and all, and their capabilities are a little different, but this comparison is much closer than it looks. Also going to discuss 4 items that concern me a great deal that I realized on the trip. I think Nissan needs to do something about it. I'm also going to have a list of other items that Nissan needs to work on. In my opinion, that most of them have to do with computer programming. They can be programmed in to change some of the settings in the car. And then at the end, I will discuss miles per gallon comparison with the Jeep. I think that's going to surprise you. All right, I'm back here at home where I can sit down with my cheat sheet and go over everything with you. I need this because I've got a lot to talk about. So I'll start off with the specifications on the Armada, what I think makes it a good vehicle, how it looks on paper. I own the Armada, I can tell you about it, but I'm not a YouTube guy that drives every vehicle that comes off the assembly line. So in my comparisons, I will compare it to my 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee. I'll give you my impressions, what happened during the trip. I'll give you a comparison in miles per gallon against the Jeep, problems I encountered on the trip, and then a list of things I think Nissan needs to work on to improve the Armada. Okay, so the first thing we'll talk about is the specifications for the Armada Pro-4X. And we all know it already. It's a 3.5 liter V6 with twin turbos, has a 9-speed automatic transmission. I will tell you that first gear is very low. It's a 5.42 to 1 reduction, where most automatics are 4.5, 4.7, something like that. So this is almost halfway between a regular first gear and a granny gear. This is the kind of gear that will get a heavy load moving from a stop, and that's what you want. 6th gear is 1 to 1, so 7th, 8th, and 9th are all overdrives, and 9 is 0.597 to 1, so that's pretty high. Now the rear axle ratio is 3.36 to 1, so it's not as low as other comparable vehicles with tow packages, but the 336 to 1 axle ratio is good enough since that first gear is so low in the transmission that actually, compared to the Ford Expedition with the tow package, the first gear in the Armada is 3% lower than first gear in the Expedition. The brakes, 13.8-inch ventilated disc all the way around with dual pistons on the front calipers and single piston on the rear calipers. The brakes did great, had no problems with the brakes themselves. There's an engine oil cooler, which is great. The engine oil capacity is 6 3/8 quarts, which is comparable to other heavy-duty V6 engines that are put into, say, tow-rated vehicles of comparable types. The transmission fluid, there is a cooler. Most automatic transmissions have a standard cooler, and then when you get a vehicle with the tow package, there's usually an auxiliary cooler added to it. There is no auxiliary cooler on the 2025 Armada. However, since every single Armada has an 8,500 pound tow rating, I think it would make sense that they would use a heavy duty transmission cooler in the first place instead of a lighter duty one that they had to add an auxiliary to it. So my indications so far on my trip were that the transmission cooler is adequate. The engine coolant is 13 3/4 quarts, which is comparable to other V6 engines with the same type of tow ratings. The 2-speed transfer case has a 2.717 to 1 lower gear ratio. That's comparable to Jeeps and all the others. It has good reduction there. The alternator, I don't know what the alternator is. You look for any electrical information on Armada about the alternator, I can't find any. I leave it up to AI. AI gives me two answers, 120 amps, 150 amps. And I think if you have a tow package and you're towing a heavy travel trailer or something like this, in most cases, other vehicles have 200 amps or more. So I think that Nissan needs to do a better job telling us what the amperage output is on their alternator. The Class 4 hitch is great, 8,500 pound capacity, 850 pound hitch weight. And in short, about these specifications, I think that Nissan needs to tell us if they have a heavy duty transmission cooler standard, and they need to tell us what the amperage output is on the alternator. Now, like I said, I'm going to compare this to my 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee. I ordered that one with the packages and the specifications, everything the way I wanted it. So it was special ordered. I had to wait a couple months for it to be built. It's a 5.7 liter V8. It has the 8-speed ZF8 HP70 transmission. And I have to say, that is an outstanding transmission. It's a 3.09 to 1 gear reduction in the rear axle, which is considerably higher than the Armada. It has, because it has the V8 engine and the tow package, it has extra heavy duty brakes. All four wheels are vented. It has an engine oil cooler, has an auxiliary transmission cooler, 16-quart cooling system, and 220 amp alternator. The transfer case is similar to the Armada, 2.72 to 1 reduction. And as good as the Jeep is, I was always loaded to the maximum capacity as far as weight goes. So that's why I wanted to move on, get something a little better, but I didn't get a Jeep because Jeep doesn't make something I want. The empty weight on the Armada is 6,000 with a gross vehicle weight rating of 7,810. So you're looking at about 1,800 pound load capacity. The Grand Cherokee empty is 5,200 pounds. It has a 6,800 pound gross vehicle weight capacity. That's 1,600 pounds carrying capacity. So the Armada outperforms the Jeep by 200 pounds. So that's a lot closer than I thought it was at the time that I bought the Armada. As far as volume goes, the Armada beats it 40% behind the first row and by 55% behind the second row in comparison. So if the second seat is up on both vehicles, the Armada has considerably more room. In fact, when I loaded it up for this recent trip, kind of felt empty back there compared to the Jeep. My driving impressions, I towed a Lance 1475, weighs about 4,500 pounds, which is about to the max. The vehicle was a very stable tow vehicle. There was some crosswinds. I really didn't have any problems. I have a load distribution hitch. The Anderson hitch is what I use. The vehicle is quiet. It's comfortable. It rode smooth. And I drove the same speed with it that I did with the Jeep on previous trips, so I have a very comparable miles per gallon at the end of this, and that limited it to 60 miles an hour. More items on driving impressions includes not having to stick extension mirrors on. 6 inches wider made a huge difference in towing my 7-foot wide Lance, and I didn't have to put extra mirrors on. It was very, very nice. Brake controller worked great. Its location is easy to reach, but it's hard to read. The spoke from the steering wheel and the stock for the windshield wipers keeps me from being able to see the readout. I have to lean way over to look to the side to see it. Engine braking was virtually non-existent above 4th gear. It's very disappointing. Engine braking in the Jeep is much better than it is in the Armada. The Armada PRO-4X has ProPilot Assist to help with driving, maintain lane control and speed and distance from the vehicle in front of you, but it is not a hands-off system like some of the other Armadas have. Didn't really have a problem with that. I'm comfortable driving my hands on the wheel anyway. One thing about it though is if you're towing and you've got everything set up properly to tow, the ProPilot Assist is turned off, but you can still use cruise control and you can use the intelligent cruise while towing. Blind spot monitoring with the trailer. There is a program there where I could set in, tell it how long my trailer is. However, in looking at the traffic and where it was warning me, I wasn't comfortable with it. So even though I had it set for 20 feet for the trailer length, I changed that to 30 feet to give myself a little extra distance there. Kind of made me feel a little more comfortable. I have 4,450 miles on it. I used 1/3 of a quart of oil, not very much. There's in the maintenance program that you get to in the settings, there's an electronic dipstick. That's what I'd call it. It's an oil level indicator, but I think of it as an electronic dipstick. Every time I check the oil during the trip, I checked the electronic dipstick. I got to tell you, I was amazed at how accurate it is. It was right on with the dipstick every time. The temperature gauge, while I was towing in the mountains, barely budged. So it's got the temperature control down pat as far as the engine coolant goes, but I don't know what the temperature of the oil was or what the temperature of the transmission fluid was. Now my Grand Cherokee has a program where I can check that in Fahrenheit or Celsius, either one. So I kind of missed that a little bit. Off-road did very good. I'd say, except for size limiting where it can go, it's about equal to the Jeep. They both have lockable transfer case, that is, and lockable rear differentials, and they both have descent control. However, the Jeep has ascent control, so it's basically an off-road cruise control that works very, very slick. But you can do the same thing without any problems. So as far as off-road capability goes, I call it a tie. The only difference would be the size limitations that the Armada would have. The cameras, especially the surround view camera, is fantastic. It looks good, up front looks good. The through the hood view is great. You're off-road and you're coming up on the crest of a hill and you don't know what's ahead of you, and you got this great big hood from the Armada, and you don't know what's ahead of you. That camera view is wonderful. Really great idea. One thing missing on the camera view is a hitch view. When I'm backing up, I have a view of what's behind me, and I can zero in on the tongue of the trailer so I can hook up on it. But if I overshoot it just a little bit and I go a little too far back and I need to pull forward, I put it in drive and it automatically goes to the front camera. So I can't see how far I need to pull up, how much I need to correct my position. So then I have to put it in reverse again to see where I've moved to. It'd be nice if it had an extra button on the screen there where you could pick hitch view and it would lock that in and it would stay there until you hit, say, 10 or 12 miles an hour as you're driving off. Problems. I come up with 4 major problems. First one, and last week I got an oil change and I talked to the service techs about it. I was climbing a small dirt hill into an RV spot, parked my trailer, and I was in tow mode, and for some reason there was slippage in the transmission and it concerned me. Now this only happened one time and that was it. But by the time I got to the top of the little hill, I was going 4 miles an hour and the engine was running about 3,200 RPM. My Jeep has never had a problem on that hill. I parked there before.
That microphone?
Sorry.
And have you repositioned that from where I put it?
It fell off once.
Okay.
Another area, I was on a steep paved road without the trailer, and it was 6 to 8 degrees. So that's about 10.5 to 14% grades, very sharp switchbacks on it. But the problem was, as I was going up the hill, as I wanted to slow down to take the curve, the transmission insisted on changing to the next gear. Once I got around the curve, which I was lugging my way around it, and I wanted to go back up, I had to put the foot all the way to the floor to get it to shift back down again so I could go up the next part of the hill, and at the next curve, it all happened again. So there's a problem there with the transmission. Seems to be programmed for efficiency. It wants to upshift at times when it shouldn't. And I noticed later on in the trip, it seems to have learned, if you want to call it that, not to do that. It was doing better, but I wasn't on another hill this steep or with curves that sharp. A serious problem occurred getting on I-70 just west of Denver. Road was under construction, there were concrete blocks up, there was no acceleration lane. As soon as I come around the corner, there was a Jeep stopped at the end of the acceleration lane, or what there was of it. It wasn't very long at all. And when he finally went, I was holding back so I could get a little bit of a rolling start, figure out where I was gonna merge in with the traffic. So once I started rolling, I let up on the gas. Apparently, it shifted to the next gear. And when I decided to go and give it the gas, that was it. It didn't downshift. It was accelerating very slowly. It would not downshift. I put my foot to the floor and I had my hands full. I was already committed. I was already at the end of the short acceleration lane, and I was hoping I had a place to go. Set up a very dangerous situation. And what I think contributed to this problem is the drive select mode, or drive mode selector, that little dial on the dash. If you have it on tow mode and you stop and you get gas like I did, and you start the car, it automatically goes back to standard. That thing should go back to where it was when you left it, where it should start where it left off. Because what happened was, I think I got started on standard mode, not tow mode, and that resulted in a serious problem for me. If it stayed where it was, that wouldn't create a serious problem. Say someone drops their trailer off and now they're driving around town for an hour in tow mode instead of standard mode. That's not the end of the world. But the other way around can result in some serious problems like I had. And then the biggest problem, I believe, is the cruise control. I was towing, I was in tow mode, I had everything set for the trailer, and I was on US 285 headed north. I'm southwest of Denver. It's a 4-lane highway with even an extra lane once in a while for slow traffic. And the cruise was set at 45. It's 45 miles an hour and 55 miles an hour in that area. No problem driving with the cruise up the hill. Armada handles uphill great. But once it hit the crest and headed down the other side, I noticed that we were still doing 45 miles an hour. It was actually seemed to be doing real good. So I started to see what was going on, and then I realized that the cruise control was applying the brakes. There was absolutely no attempt for the cruise control to use engine braking. It was a 5 to 7% downgrade for 10 miles. And there were several truck runaway ramps, and I don't want to use any of those. So as soon as I realized it was riding the brakes, and it was going to ride them for 10 miles, is what it looked like to me, I turned the cruise control off and then took control of it myself. I think that cruise control is good. You can use it when you're towing a trailer, but the brake should not be the primary thing to stop or control speed. It should be engine braking. My Jeep is engine braking. It doesn't even have control over the brakes. And in fact, 11,000 miles on the Jeep towing a trailer through Colorado and Northwest US. I can tell you, I just took it in for an oil change last week, 60,000 miles, and the brakes are still good. They're not even rated need attention or anything like that. They're still good. And that's because the Jeep is always in the right gear. It's always gearing down whether I'm using cruise control or not. And it really knows what's going on. That is a fantastic transmission, and Nissan needs to do some reprogramming, see if they can copy that. So here's what I think Nissan needs to work on. Engine braking is inefficient. I understand Nissan's 800 pounds more than the Jeep, but it should be better to control speed with the transmission than what they currently have. Transmission programming leans a little too much into efficiency. When I turn stop start off, it should not turn itself back on the next time I start the engine. The auto up and down suspension is nice and handy because it's tall and hard to get into for some people, but 18 seconds for it to go down, and then at the front, and then the back, they need to drop both of them at the same time. Or better yet, We've got a geofence program in there for my Q Garage. Why not, when I enter the geofence area, it automatically starts to lower itself? Nobody wants to sit in the garage for 18 seconds waiting for this thing to lower itself. Drive mode selector always goes back to standard. It should start. Every time you start the car, it needs to start where it was last set. The trailer brake controller is great, but I can't see it. I don't know where you'd put it, but you need a better location where you can see the readout. The transmission with 9 gears can never figure out what gear it's in. That D on the dash needs to have a small number next to it indicating what gear it's in. The temperature gauge is not sufficient. I think you should be able to give us actual temperature readouts for oil temperature and transmission fluids. The program that controls the transmission, like I've said, needs work. I use the paddle shifters more on this trip than I have in 7 years with my Jeep. In fact, my son filming this once said last week that he even forgot the Jeep had paddle shifters. Jeep transmission's got it figured out, and Nissan needs to copy it. The clear coat is too delicate. Come on, we're off-road, we're getting dirty, muddy, we wash with hard water at the nearest car wash, and turns out some hard water etched my clear coat. Clear coat, great for a Ferrari, but you could get a harder clear coat for this vehicle. And the hitch view, I talked about that, really need a hitch view so you can line up and move back and forth without losing that view, so you know where you're headed. It needs to stay on. So one more item I'm sure everybody wants to know is, what kind of gas mileage did I get on the trip? I was able to compare it to one of the trips I took in the Jeep, which was very similar. Towing a trailer, same roads going and coming from Colorado. And the Jeep made 12.4 miles per gallon on its last trip. That includes driving around without the trailer, going four-wheeling, things like that. I did the same thing in the Armada. It was a very comparable trip. I was surprised to find that I got 14.3 miles per gallon. That's actual miles divided by actual gallons used to fill the tank. I was surprised. 1.9 more miles per gallon than the Jeep. Okay, so in closing, I have to say the Armada did pretty good. There are some areas that need some work. Nissan needs to work on their transmission programming, in my opinion. As far as possibility of me getting another Jeep, because I'm sure y'all are going to wonder, why didn't I get one since I think this is such a great vehicle? And it's simple. Jeep simply does not make another vehicle like this anymore. Those days are gone. And that's it.